Hi, welcome to episode 2 of Quick Reviews. I'm Evan, and for today we are going to go over the book known as The Red Knight by Miles Cameron. If you're more of a fantasy fan than a sci-fi sort of person, this might be the book for you. It is the first book in the Traitor's Son cycle. Also, once again, if you hear the pitter-patter of the dog, I apologize. Come here, Link. Do you want to say hi again? Guess not. This one is a little bit less gruesome in the human sort, if you catch my drift. They're not as graphic about it for humans. Hi. Good boy. This is Link. Good boy. Personally, I'm a big fan of this book just because not so much of the tragedy, but I like the idea of someone, once again, in case it wasn't obvious from episode 1, I like people who rise up from almost nothing. Though in this case, he has a little bit more privilege than the last character. Quite a bit more. I will not share why, because then I'd be spoiling the book itself. But if the serious name is anything to go off of, it's safe to assume his father was someone fairly important. Sorry, I got a text message. This individual ended up running away from home and falling in with a band of mercenaries. And he fought some wars in a country very similar to France, where they have an overinflated sense of chivalry and they follow a sort of law called sword law. And it's more of a, if you want it, you take it. And if you're offended, challenge the one who offended you to a duel. And if you kill him, who's left to say or dispute you at all? It's just, you're the one that's right. You don't really see much of that specific area in the books, but in the books there is humanity, and then there's the wild, which is, think fae and druids and stuff like that. And the wild and civilization, aka humanity, are constantly warring against each other over farmland and forest and things like that. So, the wild uses its magic to try and retake the land that civilization has claimed and started cultivating in order to prevent themselves from getting wiped out. Whereas civilization / humanity repeatedly fights back against that because they need more land to grow and sustain their population and try and prevent future famine. So it's a war between two powers who are both trying to do what's in their best interests, and they are not per se unable to compromise, but at first very unwilling, because they both view the other as, I'd say, not rivals, but lesser opponents, like lesser beings, I guess. It's like, think of how when you look at an ant, you don't think, oh, that's another living thing. It's an insect. And that's kind of how they view each other. Both sides think the other is primitive and barbaric. But this book follows the story of Gabriel, and does his little shenanigans. He takes command of this mercenary band and gets paid to go rescue, I guess I'd call it a mission, like a Christian mission. It's like a little church with castle walls, basically. He gets paid to go rescue that from the encroaching wild, and it becomes a very bloody affair. Now, I'd say one of the main reasons I like this book is I'm a big fan of something called HEMA, which means Historical European Martial Arts. The author of this book spent a couple years in Europe studying HEMA and getting his information from masters of the blade, masters of the spear, noble houses from way back when in feudal Europe, and asking historians and the likes how mercenary companies functioned and kind of moved about back then. Kind of like that meme how people like to jokingly say, get Frank the bowman and a couple other guys from the tavern and go to war. That's kind of how war in medieval Europe kind of was. Just a couple of dudes from town. You join up with your lord, and your lord goes and joins up with his, I don't know, whoever's on the hierarchy above him at that time. So it could be a duke, baron, king, prince, you name it, could be that. So the band is mainly just a bunch of cutthroats and hardened criminals, and they're just arguing and bickering, and they got some really weird dialogue and relationships. But what I like most about this book, similarly to Red Rising, would have to be the fact all of the characters have depth, and all of them have backstory, even the ones you hate the most, which is going to be a lot that you hate in this book, probably more so than the book from the previous episode. A lot of the archers you will probably learn are kind of scumbags. And so, there's, in this book and the main band, there's 3, maybe 4 people that kind of keep order in the group, 2 of which are focused on more than the other. But, yeah, no, I think this was a pretty good book, and it's book 1 of, I think, an 8-book series, maybe more. If I look at Google here, it says it has a 4.1 out of 5 stars for Goodreads. 93% of people like this book. Personally, I loved it. I liked how it doesn't make the monsters in the book seem invincible, like a lot of European folklore. Sure, they're going to be sounding definitely monstrous and very difficult to face, and in some cases, hideous creatures. But it also does it in such a way where there's a descriptive sort of beauty in the writing. And when the protagonist, or really anybody else, does anything at all, there's an art form to how Miles Cameron writes in this. And you can tell he definitely did his research with all the fighting. And if you're a fan of romance, there's a good bit of romance in this. I would definitely not advise this book unless you're 18 plus, personally. It's definitely mature, but maybe not so much for the romance. But I'd say the romance is more of a forbidden kind. He falls in love with the equivalent of a nun. But yeah, it's a great book, one I definitely recommend reading to you. I have honestly no clue if I convinced you to read it. For the 3rd episode, I have most definitely another book that I'm hoping people will like. I was thinking about doing the Silmarillion, if I'm pronouncing it right. It's a book from Lord of the Rings. But yeah, have a wonderful evening.